Last night on Abby Phillips' program, a heated exchange unfolded when a conservative commentator attempted to challenge Democrats on questions of morality and ethics. The discussion took a sharp turn when journalist Charles Blow pushed back with a series of facts and arguments that left little room for a response. The moment quickly became one of the most talked about segments of the night. What stands out to me is how often political figures try to claim the moral high ground while overlooking controversies within their own ranks. Voters have spent years watching public figures face criticism over their statements, behavior, and personal conduct, yet many of the same voices now present themselves as the ultimate authority on ethics and values. That contradiction is hard to ignore. Instead of addressing concerns consistently across the board, many political loyalists seem willing to excuse almost anything when it involves someone on their own side. The result is a political environment where party loyalty often matters more than principles. Critics argue that this kind of blind allegiance has transformed politics into something closer to a team sport than a serious debate about policy and leadership. Rather than evaluating issues independently, many supporters simply repeat talking points and defend their side no matter the circumstances. In today's video, we'll break down the key clips from the discussion, examine the arguments made by both sides, and look at why this particular exchange generated so much attention online.
We are just days away now from Maine's primary election, and Democrats are facing a dilemma tonight as the party is navigating a series of controversies surrounding Senate candidate Graham Plattner. The latest blow, published by the New York Times, alleging unsettling and, in at least one case, physically threatening behavior toward his former girlfriends. Plattner denies the accusations, and tonight he is plowing forward with his campaign.
When hurtful things I said on the internet a decade ago came out into the public, as I shared my personal journey through PTSD and darkness, of recovery and accountability and growth, Maine had my back. Now, as every single piece of that past and journey gets dug up, litigated, and weaponized, you have my back. And when politically motivated, serious and false accusations are made against me, Maine, you have my back.
And he got some backup from Democratic Senator Ro Khanna. Listen.
He understood that those years that he came back were not the best years of his life. He was ashamed of some of the things he said and did. And then he, unlike others, took accountability for it. And he's worked to be a better man, a better human being.
Democrats see Maine's Senate race as a must-win in order to take back the chamber in November. And with Plattner on the defense, sources tell CNN, people are now urging Maine's governor, Janet Mills, to re-enter the race after she dropped out in April. It might be a little bit too late, and I think many people acknowledge that even if she were to get back into it, she had just suspended her campaign. It may not make a difference. But you know what was notable to me listening to Graham Plattner just now? Was just how scripted he was in that moment. Suddenly he is like a politician, just like any other person, trying to turn water into wine effectively. And I think that tells me a lot about this particular incident, is that it's the same playbook. It's deny, deflect, defend, and then try to move on. And I'm just wondering if that's okay with Democrats, given the circumstances.
Oh, is that for me?
I'm not a Democrat.
I don't think people are saying that it's necessarily okay, right? So I don't think that any abuse of anyone is legitimate, right, defensible. If what these three women allege is true, it is condemnable. But that said, that conversation has to happen with the voters of Maine. I will not be lectured by anybody who supports Donald Trump about the abuse of women, ever. So when Republicans try to enter that discussion with me, you cannot, unless you are going to say that you are also upset and unwilling to support someone who has bragged on tape.
One aspect of this debate that I find particularly interesting is the sudden focus on Graham Plattner's tattoo controversy. Political commentators have spent countless hours discussing it, yet many of those same people have shown far less interest in examining other controversies involving figures they support. That inconsistency is what catches my attention. If standards are going to be applied, They should be applied evenly. Otherwise, it begins to look less like a search for truth and more like a political strategy designed to target one specific individual. At the same time, I think it's important to approach the situation with some nuance. Many people have argued that Plant's tattoo reflected admiration for a military image or reputation, rather than support for any extremist ideology. Over the years, he has stated that he does not identify with those beliefs, and supporters point to his actions and public statements as evidence of that. However, that doesn't mean every concern should simply be dismissed. Questions about past decisions are fair, and voters have every right to scrutinize candidates carefully. Critics have also pointed out that some aspects of his history deserved greater examination long before they became a national story. Ultimately, though, elections are often about choices rather than perfection. Voters weigh the strengths and weaknesses of each candidate and decide which one they believe would better represent their interests. That larger political reality is shaping much of the conversation surrounding this race.
Other Democrats.
Right, that's what I'm saying.
Because other Democrats are saying,
and it's a primary, so
hey,
the Democrats have to make the decision.
Yeah.
And when it's over, whoever is goes up against Susan Collins, I'm for. If you go to the floor of the Senate when Kavanaugh has been accused, and you say, Christine Blasey Ford, she's been traumatized. This is her words. She's been traumatized. I'm sure she's been assaulted. However, I do not believe her, and I'm going to vote for him anyway. And in that same speech, she said that Kavanaugh was not, and she assured voters in America that Kavanaugh was not going to vote to overturn Roe. And what did he do? Exactly that. So at the end of the day, I'm going to support whoever comes out of that primary.
It's interesting you mentioned the Christine Blasey Ford incident. And Ro Khanna, who is speaking tonight at Graham Plattner's event, was very supportive of her. And the Democratic ethos for a long time was believe all women. And of course, Christine Blasey Ford was lauded. She was hosted on The View. She was on the cover of Time magazine. She was on CBS. She was a celebrity for the left. And there was no evidence actually to suggest that she had even met Brett Kavanaugh. And yet the Democrats embrace that hook, line, and sinker. And now that has changed, and it's only changed because the accuser against Graham Plattner is a Republican. That is it. There is no difference. The only reason they want to discredit her, and the very people who were defending Christine Blasey Ford are now attacking her.
Went after E. Jean Carroll and tried to discredit her because she was a woman attacking a Republican. Is that the same reason?
Those accusations. So
no, you
let's
did
be
this on
clear.
Saturday. You said this on Saturday.
About
Do you want me to read back what you said on Saturday?
Feel free.
Okay, please.
Feel
Thank
free.
you. Thank you, because I come prepared. Okay, so first thing you said.
Okay, I'm going to be careful here because people have had to pay millions of dollars for making the same comments that you're about to make.
Okay, so let me read, and I'm going to start with the quote. I actually do think that if you look at E. Jean Carroll's case now, there is new evidence coming to light. She says that Reid Hoffman has nothing to do with it. It turns out that he may have, and then Abby had to correct you and let you know on Saturday what I'm going to let you know today, which is that has already been presented to a judge.
Let me just try to distill what this conversation seems to be.
Reid Hoffman did actually donate to that.
Hold on a second. This is not about Reid Hoffman, but I do want to observe something about this interaction, because if you're a regular non-red shirt, blue shirt wearing American, what you're basically seeing is that Democrats have decided that sometimes it's okay to believe the accuser and sometimes it's not. And then Republicans have decided that sometimes it's okay to believe the accuser and sometimes it's not. And it really depends mostly on the partisanship in the moment. To me, that is like everything that people think is wrong with our politics.
And Abby, you saw it on display at Graham Plattner's rally tonight. You had Ro Khanna get up and basically say, we should believe the women who have come out and disclosed these allegations. And then you had Graham Plattner saying the exact opposite, that it was a politicized attack. His campaign went on the offensive and went after Lindsay Fifield in that New York Times story. And so they can't even get their own message straight on the same stage in which they're appearing.
So
you
let-
believe,
let-
you
let-
believe that women their stories should be credited and they should be believed?
Well, you know what, Charles? I actually worked with Lindsay Fifield for many years.
Okay.
She was my colleague. I was her boss. And so in this particular case, yes, I think Lindsay is a credible person, and I do believe her.
But not Christine Blasey Ford. You don't believe that? Or do you credit it at all?
Let's also
There
be
were a
clear,
lot
this is
of questions.
happening.
I want to ask, because when you interviewed Lindsey Graham in 2018, you didn't ask a single word about her. You literally prompted him to repeat what he had said in the Senate and did not say anything about the case that she was presenting. I don't believe that you do care about what women are saying.
Oh, okay.
Supporters of Graham Plant argue that the tattoo controversy has been exaggerated far beyond what the available evidence actually supports. They point out that many people get symbols or designs without fully understanding every historical association attached to them, especially when those connections are relatively obscure. Plant has repeatedly stated that, at the time, he viewed the image as a skull and crossbones design rather than a political statement. Whether people accept that explanation is ultimately up to them, but it remains an important part of the discussion. For critics attempting to portray him as someone who embraces extremist ideology, the challenge is providing evidence beyond the existence of a tattoo itself. So far, many observers note that there has been little concrete proof connecting him to those beliefs in his public actions or statements. As someone interested in history, I can understand why this debate exists. Certain symbols carry meanings that are immediately recognizable to experts but largely unknown to the average person. That distinction matters when evaluating intent and context. None of this means Plant should be viewed as beyond criticism. Public figures deserve scrutiny. But if accusations are going to be made, they should be supported by clear evidence rather than assumptions alone. Otherwise, the conversation risks becoming more about political attacks than genuine accountability. The broader question is whether people are applying the same standards consistently across the political spectrum. That's where many voters believe the real debate begins.
Let me ask, let's just be transparent about this. You don't believe Christine Blasey Ford. Is he right about that?
I think there are many holes that were poked in Christine Blasey Ford's story, not only by Senate Republicans at the time, but also in all of the information that was revealed. I mean, it was clearly an attempt to try to take down Justice Kavanaugh.
So that's a no. But Charles, you said the people of Maine will decide. Sure, they will.
Right.
Do you believe Lindsay Fifield?
I believe that her story should be taken as at face value to say this is what she believes. I don't know what it has to be litigated. I think it has to be litigated. Yeah, we have to look into it.
Does it?
I believe so. I believe in every case. Because
at the end of the day, I mean, Brett Kavanaugh's situation was not going to be litigated. The ask from Democrats was take it at face value and don't vote.
There was testimony. First of all, there was testimony.
Yeah, but that's not litigation.
Not litigation.
Testimony in a confirmation hearing.
Right.
Investigate
So the ask was listen to this woman, believe her, and vote against his nomination. That was the ask.
Here's what I'll say. I think, to your point, if you feel like you do have a blue or a red jersey on, I think we are living in a hypocritical political environment right now, and it is hard to take any accusation and any stance of moral clarity with any real validity because of who is our current president, quite honestly. And I think that he has been convicted by a jury of his peers. He has said, called most people everything but a child of God. And then people are asked to hold themselves to a higher standard than the leader of our nation. And I think that is hard for people because we are all flawed humans. What I will say, and I've been saying this for the last 24 hours, the accusations that came out in this investigation are very disturbing to me. I will never in this iteration of the political cycle get to vote for Graham Plattner. Mainers will decide. But what I will say is that sometimes, and the American public actually did this in 2024, sometimes people's immoral character flaws are less consequential to their life circumstances. And in this instance, I think Mainers are saying Susan Collins is not representing them in the way that they want to be representative. And they are willing to overlook that. And quite honestly, so did 79 million Americans in 2024.
So did tens of millions of Americans who voted for Donald Trump.
That's what I'm saying. But the question is, all I just want to say is the question is why are we there? Why is our economy, why is our international affairs so turbulent, so unstable that we have to overlook really flawed acts on our leaders because other people's leadership is worse.
Overlooking those things is a choice. You know, a permissive culture happens when people allow themselves
But having to feed your kids
engage
is
in
not
a
a
permissive
choice.
culture. That's what happens. But I just want to play the James Carville thing because we heard a little taste of it, but here's how he reads the situation.
We got a guy who he could be 100 times more than he is. He'd never be as as what we got in Washington now anyway. And I just saw this tut and ooh, and we got to do this and we got to be fair. You know, James, if a Republican did what Graham Platten did, you would be outraged. Yeah, I would. But what I'm more outraged about and what I have to consider first is this country is about to lose it. The whole thing.
Again, I mean, you could swap the name Graham Plattner for Donald Trump, and it would be the exact same rationale.
Well, look,
you
the
realize
allegations
that,
against
right?
Graham Plattner are very serious and need to be taken seriously. I don't think any accusation carries a conviction. They need to be examined. They're far less serious than the accusations against Donald Trump, not just by E. Jean Carroll, but by many other women. Confirmed in his own attitude, you can grab him by you know what. Okay? So there are two different cases, and we should distinguish between them. We are one divorce away from being in the toilet. We're one illness away from being in the gutter. And that is not the American way. And they hear the shiny people tutting, as he says, get this candidate out, get that candidate out, don't vote for this person, don't leave it up to the people of Maine. I trust them.
Well, okay. Then we can say pretty definitively, no more talk about character. Whether it's Donald Trump or Graham Plattner or Marjorie Taylor Greene or anyone.
No,
in why not? I mean, let's not talk about it because if the policy is the thing that is the most important to you, and the policy from the left looks a certain way to you, policy from the right looks a certain way to you, then all the other moral issues should just be off the table.
No, I'm saying this. I refuse. I've watched enough cycles since 16 of Democrats being judged by a different ruler. Mm-hmm. And I'm not saying that the worst ruler should rule the day. I'm simply saying this idea of that there are different measurements for the same sorts of behavior that some people just ignore, and other people drop out and say, okay, well, you're supposed to be the better, the more moral group.
I would like to point out, though, this is a primary. So Democrats have the opportunity to select a candidate. They can take out Susan Collins, right? This isn't about a question, do I vote for Graham Plattner or do I vote for Susan Collins? This is a question, do I vote for somebody who's normal or do I vote for somebody who has a Nazi tattoo?
Let me just ask you one last thing, and then we have to go. Given everything that was said here, especially about the allegations against President Trump, many of which were validated in court, right? Given all of that, I mean, is that disqualifying for Donald Trump?
I mean, it's
tongue-tied.
Yeah.
Tongue-tied.
And that's
a lot of them
why,
are not. Look, I mean,
and that's the problem.
I think we just have to decide
just
what
we're doing. You'll still be allowed on television, and they'll still you talk.
We got to decide what we're doing here. We either care about it or we don't. Do we care about it?
No.
The point I'm making is that in a primary, you have the option to vote for a Democrat. You can select a normal
just like
person
Republicans
or a Nazi.
had an opportunity to vote
and
for
Republicans
and against Donald Trump. Not once, not twice, but on 3 occasions. And they ignored
it. Just like
they ignored the allegations against
right now in
Donald
Texas.
Trump.
People ignore stuff. And so the reason why Americans look and are willing actually to do it is because we do it too. Because we're flawed and we're
tattoo
human.
is a little different.
No, I think Trump, there was also Bill Clinton. How can we go a whole conversation?
That is true. James Carville knows a little bit about that as well.
Being accused of rape.
As this story continues to dominate political discussions, some commentators remain focused almost entirely on Plant's past tattoo controversy. For many viewers, however, the bigger question is whether the issue is being discussed fairly and proportionately compared to other political controversies. Critics of the coverage argue that media outlets and political operatives often highlight certain stories while giving far less attention to others. This selective focus can leave audiences wondering whether the goal is objective reporting or simply gaining a political advantage during a competitive race. It's understandable that some voters have mixed feelings about Plant after weeks of negative headlines. Whenever accusations and controversies dominate the news cycle, Uncertainty is a natural reaction. At the same time, supporters argue that voters should evaluate the full picture rather than making judgments based solely on one narrative. Another point generating debate is the sourcing behind several allegations that have circulated in recent reports. Questions about verification, credibility, and political affiliations have led many observers to scrutinize not only the claims themselves but also the timing of when those claims surfaced. When major accusations emerge during a closely watched political contest, people naturally examine who benefits from the story and why it appears at that particular moment. That doesn't automatically invalidate the claims, but it does make transparency and evidence especially important. As we review the clips and reactions, we'll look at the arguments being made from all sides and consider why this controversy has become such a major topic in the broader political conversation.